I kind of lost track. I think it's about 9 years. We've been part of I Family for about 8 years, and we love it. So when Heather asked me to do this, it's like, I don't know that I have a whole lot to say about how to write a class. I'm still kind of in the learning phase myself on how to do it. I've mentored several scholar classes that were already written for me. Somebody already had put it together, planned it out, told me what I was going to teach, when I was going to teach it, and that was really, I actually really loved that. And so I'm kind of learning this process on my own. But one of the things that I found as I was trying to put this presentation together is that writing a class, designing a class and putting that together is really a lot like writing a book. So I am a writer. I am not yet published, but I am a writer, and I do a lot of writing. And I've completed one young adult manuscript. I'm working on revising that one and writing a middle grade novel and a nonfiction, and I just finished my first picture book. And it's really been a really interesting experience, but I have found that the same principles apply to writing a class as to writing a book. So that's why we have lots of books, because we're going to kind of use that as my I don't know, metaphor for the day. I'm not sure. So when an author wants to write a book, the first thing they have to think about is, who is my audience? Okay? I have to know who I'm writing for. Because who my audience is going to determine whether or not, a picture book, is it going to have lots of pictures and not many words? It's going to determine my content. There are just some things that are not child content, right? Like it just is. It's gonna determine everything about what my book looks like. And the same is true for writing a class. You have to decide who's your audience. Are you teaching a core phase class? Are you teaching a level learner class? Are you teaching a scholar class? Which age? So I started with, which age groups do you enjoy working with? I'm currently teaching a core class and a scholar class. And I will tell you that I love scholar-age children. I love teenagers. They are such a remarkable group of people, and I love core phase, but I struggle with core phase. So I have a sister here in the corner who has a gift with young children. She makes every young child she comes in contact with feel like they are the most important child on the planet, and she just has this gift. And I don't have that gift, but I do enjoy my teenagers. So I'm discovering that probably I'm not gonna offer to teach many more core classes because I'm not good at it. It's really hard, but I love working with the teenagers, and I have a good time with them, and I think they enjoy working with me. So that's something to consider. Look at, what are your strengths? Who do you like to talk, to spend time with? Who do you, I can't think of the right phrases, so we'll just leave it at that. The other thing to think about when you're trying to decide, I want to teach a class, what should I teach, is to consider your own children's needs. The core class that I'm teaching, I have a 6-year-old, and he really likes anything that has an engine, anything that moves, anything that's mechanical, and I mean, he's a boy. He is a boy. He is the son of an engineer, and the combination just is a beautiful thing. So I thought, okay, they needed more core classes, I'll teach a Things That Go class. It is not my strong suit, but he loves it. He thinks it's great. So I'm meeting his need. My economics class, when I was thinking, okay, I'd really like to do a scholar class, but I don't know what to do. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I felt like it is really, especially in the world that we live in, it is really important that my daughter know and understand basic economic concepts. And so that kind of is what drove me to select the 2 classes that I am mentoring this semester. The other thing that I considered when I was looking at my scholar class is I knew that my daughter was planning to take WUBA, and I knew that she was wanting to be an Activate. And those 2 classes were going to be demanding. She was going to have a lot of outside work, she was going to have a lot of extra practices, she was going to have a lot of time, that she had to commit to those other things on top of the fact that she has set a goal to graduate at 16. And so she has a lot that she has to try and squeeze into the next 2 years. And so when I designed this class, I thought, okay, I want it to be a scholar class. I want it to be something that is going to be informative, that they're going to learn from, but because I know that I want her to take this class and I know that she's not going to have a lot of outside time, I intentionally structured my class to not have a lot of outside work. I have worked in things that they can do for extra credit. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you show up to class and you participate, that's you've met the requirement. I've tried to make it interesting. I've tried to make it educational. But really, that was my goal, and I did that on purpose because I knew she had other things. So I consider your children's needs when you're deciding on your audience. That's something you can take into consideration. There is great satisfaction from mentoring other people's children. I look at this group of kids that I've mentored, some of them for 2 or 3 years, and they're mine. I just claim them all. I love them, and I'm like, oh, this one's mine, and this one's mine. And it was so fun when we had a lecture night last night with our economics group, and they played games and everything, and I just look at all of them like, oh, I just love them all. They're just so amazing, right? But there is also deep satisfaction in meeting your own children's needs, and it kind of helps you to, you have a little bit, you get to know the kids that are your kids' age, and you're a little bit more invested when you know that your child is benefiting from it. So again, those are some things to think about when it comes to audience. Any thoughts on that from anyone? Anything you want to add? Okay, so the next thing that I thought about is to bear in mind your audience's abilities, okay? As a writer needs to consider the subject matter and the presentation for their audience, a mentor must do the same for their students, okay? I have to decide on things that are going to be age appropriate, right? I'm going to read Can I Play Too to my 4-year-old. And this is subject matter that is very appropriate for a 4-year-old. It's appropriate for adults too, but he's not going to be able to handle Jane Eyre, right? He's not going to be able to handle, I don't know, a very simplified version of the story of Helen Keller, but he's not interested. He doesn't care. My 14-year-old, my 12-year-old, they can handle other things, and the subject matter is going to be different based on that. So, core phase. When you're talking about core phase, you're thinking I want to do a class for core phases. You think picture books, right? We have The Perfect Pumpkin Pie, where it has engaging pictures. It has minimal reading that we have to do. It tells a fun story, but one of the things I learned in writing my own picture book is that picture books are deceptively complex. They look so simple. We have a little picture, we have some words that go with it, and some of them really are, but really good picture books, think of the ones you like, the really good picture books are much more complex underneath than they look. The characters have to be just as well-rounded, they have to be just as deep and complex and rich as any scholar-level novel. The storyline, the story arc has to be there. There has to be something that we're working towards and we're going towards in order to really have a picture book that works. Okay, so don't look at your core phase children as, oh, I can just throw some treats and games at them and it'll be fine. Because they're a lot more complex than we give them credit for. That being said, they have very limited attention spans. And they have very limited skills. I thought with the first day of my Things That Go class, I have 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, and I thought, perfect, we're gonna fold airplanes. We're gonna talk about airplanes, we'll fold airplanes, we'll have some airplane throwing races or contests or something. And I did not realize that 6-year-olds can't fold airplanes. And really, really struggle with following the directions to fold an airplane. And I didn't realize how challenging that would be. And it worked out fine. I ended up folding their airplanes for them, and that was fine, it worked out. The class, when I got to the end, I was like, oh, that's not hard. But it was hard for them. The other thing that I'm finding with my core phase is because their attention span is so short, I have to come with 15 different activities for a 50-minute class. They can only pay attention for this long, so I'm constantly having to change it up. Now we're going to do a story. Now let's sing a song. Now let's run around and pretend that we're airplanes. Now let's, do another story. Now we're going to do this activity. They need that constant changing, that constant variety, or they lose focus really fast. But the other thing is that they want to share. It's so interesting. Okay, today we're going to talk about helicopters, and they immediately all have something they want to say about helicopters. That isn't generally, a lot of it isn't necessarily, I can't think of the phrase, applicable to what I had planned to talk about. Thank you. But it's something that they're excited about and they want to be able to share. And so we have to let them, right? Let them share what they know. And then kind of give them one more thing that they can learn or be excited about. Love of learners. Think beginning nonfiction. Kind of basic things that are contain lots of facts, maybe get in depth a little bit, right? With a love of learner, you can start getting, they're still looking for broad information, lots of, a big, broad, shallow pool, but it can have a little bit of a deep end, right? A little bit more interesting things. Again, they need middle grade novels. They are still, again, they look simple on the surface, but they have this depth and this complexity. They have challenges that these kids have to overcome. And really the biggest difference as far as storyline in a middle grade novel is that the big challenge they have to overcome is winning the spelling bee, right? They're not having to save the world or stop, a major catastrophe or, coax a stubborn love interest into paying attention to them, right? It's a different level, different ideas, but they still have to meet that challenge. So with your love of learners, a little bit more depth. You're going to introduce them to the wonder and the magic of the world around them. They want to learn. That's the idea, right? They're excited about it, and your enthusiasm is what's going to communicate to them and make them really excited about learning whatever it is you've planned for them. Let me look here. I don't know, any questions about those two so far? Comments, gripes, complaints? I feel a little bit scattered. I was just talking to Rosie here. I hosted a game night for my economics class last night, and the last group of kids left about 11:45. I was like, I'm kind of tired. And so I'm not functioning quite as well as I'd hoped. Okay, so for scholar phase, right? Scholar phases, these stories are rich and complex. They have lots of layers. These novels can be very niche, right? You have science fiction and fantasy and thrillers and romances and mysteries, okay? They tend to, that's when they're really starting to kind of wanting to zone in on one particular thing that they get really excited about. And scholar classes can be that way, right? We are talking about this, and we're going to get really in depth on this one topic. They can do that. They have a little bit more attention span. Even then, I find with my scholar age kids, it's very helpful to mix things up. I take activities that we do, simulations. I'm trying to think, okay. I wrote a lot of this out because I'm a writer, and I kind of think better when I have time to actually write it out. So your scholars are going to be just like their books. They have their own interests. They can be very independent, but they still need kind of a firm guiding hand to kind of lead them along that path and help keep them focused on what it is we're learning, right? It's good to get them involved. You're going to ask them questions. and make them find the answer. Instead of just handing them the answer on a silver platter, you're gonna ask them questions that make them think about it. And it's really, one of the things I love about that is they often have things that I haven't considered that kind of broaden it even for me. I learn from them just as they're learning from me. And that is a really wonderful synergistic environment to be in. It's really, really fun. Have them solve problems, play games, do simulations, have book discussions. Keep them on their toes and try to think of as many ways to involve them as possible, right? They don't do just a really long lecture well. Most adults don't do a really long lecture well, right? We kind of, our mind wanders. Okay, also with scholars, well, really with any of them, but particularly with scholars, you want to set expectations and boundaries. They need to know up front, this is what's expected of them. And one of the things I'm learning with my economics class is that you have to keep telling them what your expectations are. I had one student, so for my economics class, one of the things they have to do, again, because I didn't want it to be burdensome, I kept it at a minimum, they are required to do 15 hours of work in the semester for which they are compensated. That compensation can be money, it can be a trade, it can be mentoring, whatever it is, they have to record what work they did, how many hours they did it, and what their compensation is. That is one of the requirements, but I had one student, when I asked him, how's your work log going? Is everybody like keeping up with their work log? He's like, work log? What are you talking about? What's the work log? And I'm going, this is not the first time I've mentioned it. It's not even the second time. How did you miss this information? And so I fortunately had extra work logs here. Anybody need one? If you need one, I have it. And I had 3 or 4 students that needed the work log. And then I said something about earning their silver dollar at the end. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so you have to tell them what their expectations are, and then you have to tell them again and again, and keep kind of reminding them that these are the expectations. So you're gonna have expectations, and you're gonna have requirements. You need to be firm, and you'll have to remind them. Generally speaking, though, I find that when I demand respect from them, and when I show them respect, they get it. I have, there's always at least one that's just kind of there for the social aspect, and they're not really interested in learning. And usually I have to remind that one, be like, hi, hello, see me? I'm the one that gets to talk right now. But for the most part, when they know what the expectations are, they meet those expectations. So I need 2 volunteers. Actually, I need 3. So I have 3 volunteers to come help me with something. It's not hard. I promise I'm not asking you to do anything that's super hard. Thank you, Heather. And actually I can, okay, good, perfect. We'll have,
Those are cool jump ropes.
and I did not realize that I would not be able to, we haven't actually used them yet, as you can tell. So if anybody has like a knife or something, that would be super helpful. Like my 14-year-old daughter would have one. Oh, that's right. Need ingenuity, use our brains. Maybe. I have nail clippers, maybe that would be. Oh, she's the woman right here. Thank you, Rosie. Okay, so Heather, I'm going to ask you to hold one end of this jump rope, and I'm going to hold the other. And Alice didn't know that she was, let's hold it. We're going to hold it like that. Alice, I would like you please to jump over the rope.
Do I have to like jump both feet or?
I am not going to tell you how you have to do this. Okay. Good. I mean, you didn't see it, but did you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I saw it. Okay. Thank you. That was excellent. So Alice, I have a question for you. Was that the highest you can jump?
No.
So why didn't you jump the highest you could jump? Okay, well, thank you.
What did she say?
She said she didn't need to jump that high to get over, right, the 8 or 10 inches that we had it held up. Your students are exactly the same. If you hold the rope down at the ground and tell them to jump, they will jump just high enough to get over the rope. They don't see the need to push themselves any harder because that's not expected. But my experience is that when your students, when you set the rope a little high so they have to work for it, they generally put forth the effort it takes to get over the rope. Does that make sense? So it's okay to set expectations that challenge them. And I mean, I say that, and then I say, well, in my economics class, I really didn't. I do have some things that I hope are challenging. I didn't want to overwhelm them because I don't necessarily feel like my class is the most important class for me. But don't be afraid to challenge your youth. Set expectations, remind them of them, encourage them, and watch them jump higher than they thought they could, because they'll do it. Especially when they know that you love them, they will do anything to try and please you. That gives you, as a mentor, great power. And sometimes it's a little bit scary that you can influence them that much, but it can be a very powerful thing for them to have. Just like Carrie said, that she had children that were like, these mentors are some of the most powerful influences in my life. And you have that ability and that opportunity to be that powerful mentor. So, let me think, okay, I have one other thing I wanted to say about scholars in particular, but children in general. Don't be afraid to get involved. I had some experiences recently I went camping with a group of people, and I worked with the young women at church, my economics class, and I recently had this experience where I had a group of kids, and they all wanted, we were camping, and this group of kids, they all wanted to go cliff jumping. And they needed someone, I don't know, who could, I'm standing here listening to the conversation as these teenagers are talking about it. I'm like, oh, we really want to go, who could take us, do you think? And I don't know, maybe I could ask my mom, or I don't know, maybe I could ask my mom. And I finally said, I have a vehicle, and I have a driver's license. And I'm willing to take you. Would you take us? Yes. And one of them looks at me and says, will you jump? And I was like, yes. And so I took this group of kids. We got in my 7-passenger van with 12 teenagers, and we drove out to the river, and we found the place that's, the rock that we were going to jump off of. And we went cliff jumping. And they had so much fun that the next day, they wanted to do it again. Hey, will you take us again? Sure, no problem. We load up, we go out there. And then afterwards, we went over to the reservoir, and they were playing King of the Mountain, King of the Dock, pushing each other off the dock and trying to. And I was standing there watching, and I kind of moved. I was going to go push my own daughter off the dock. And I stepped over the invisible line, and one of them, not my daughter, turned and said, you step over that line, you're fair game. And I was like, bring it on. You want to all right, let's go. And I played with them for, 15 minutes, and then I left them to do their thing while I attended to my 6-year-old. And I had one of the young ladies that was part of that group come to me later, and she was talking, she says, that was so fun. Adults never play with us. And I have since been, I've been with these groups of kids, and they're like, well, we're going to play this game. Aren't you playing too? Last night with our economics class, we had this game that they wanted to play, and one of them was like, well, you got to play too, aren't you? And I'm like, well, there's not, it's only a game for 8 people, and we made it stretch for the 9. I'll watch. But I can't play. Well, I'll sit out so you can play. No, really, it's okay. You play the game. I'm good. Okay, they want me to be involved. And I've had a couple of them that have come and said essentially the same thing. Adults come play with us. It's so fun that you will come and play the games with us and be involved. Now, I think they also want time without mom there, right? And I think we all kind of assume that, like, teenagers don't want me in the middle of their fun. And I think that that's true, but I think it's also true that they want you. And they like it. When I was at girls' camp and they were having a dance, and most of the leaders were like, I'm not getting out there. But my daughter was like, Mom, come on, you gotta dance with us. Okay, I'm a really bad dancer, but I can do bad dancing for you. And there was like 2 other leaders that were out there just hamming it up and having fun. And the girls loved it. So, don't be afraid to get involved with your kids, to get involved with their friends, and to be fun. Be a leader, because they need a leader more than they need a friend. They've got friends. But be a friend too. And don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to involve yourself a little bit. And then give them their time. I think that's everything I have to say about that. What's my time? Okay. The next part of this process, I'm planning my class. I've determined my audience. I've considered the abilities of what it is they can actually do, because I want to challenge them, but I don't want to overwhelm them, and I don't want to have them be bored as can be. The next thing you have to do is plot your story. So what do you think I mean by plot your story? What's that?
Plan your curriculum.
Okay. Plan your curriculum. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think of like a table of contents, kind of,
Okay.
when you were applying to books.
Yeah.
Laying it out.
Exactly. So in the writing world, we talk about really 2 different types of writers. We call them plotters and pantsers. Plotters are the people that want to plan out every detail of their story before they write. Every chapter's outlined, everything's broken down. They know from one minute to the next everything that's going to happen in this story. And they plot it out almost excruciatingly before they start writing. Pantsers are people that write by the seat of their pants, right? They're just like, okay, I know where I want to start, and I know where I want it to end up, and now I'm just going to sit down and write and see what happens. And I would tell you, as structured as I am, and I am highly structured, maybe a little OCD on the highly structured side. In my life, I was almost appalled actually to discover that I'm more of a pantser. It's really interesting to me to sit down and write, and the story becomes organic, and my characters just kind of do what they're going to do. And I'm like, oh, look where I ended up. How am I gonna get, I have this general idea of where I want the story to go, but I haven't planned it all out. When you're planning your curriculum, your class, you can be a plotter, you can be a pantser. It doesn't really matter. There's not one right way to do it. Take into consideration, this semester there's 12 weeks. So I need to decide what are the 12 things I really want to focus on in the course of my class. What are the 12 most important things for my class to learn? For my things that go class, I was like, okay, I need 12 vehicles. Well, I found that I can't focus on just one vehicle or even necessarily one type of vehicle, like boats. There's only so much I can say about boats. So many different activities I can come up with for boats. I can't. Somebody else probably could. I am not gifted at this. And so I was like, okay, well, I did boats. What's there to say about it, right? I'm done. So now I'm having to get creative. Last week we did wind-powered vehicles. And we talked about wind, anything that's powered by the wind. So I had to kind of get creative about how to do that. But you're going to break your content up so that you can address the 12 points you want to address. In next semester, there's 14. So again, you're gonna do that. There's no one way to do this. I'm just looking at my bold and lights. There's no one way to go about this, and each method has its own strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so I'm just going to read this part because I'm just going to read it. You may not be the kind of mentor who plans out every class weeks in advance. And that's okay. You don't have to be that kind of mentor. However, Just know that when you show up at class, your students will expect you to be ready to lead them when you show up. If you show up and you're just rushing into class 10 minutes late and you only have, 10 minutes of class time filled and then you're done, and it's like, okay, well, free time for the rest of the time. That's not gonna fly. The kids are not going to be interested in that. It's not going to hold their attention. So, whether you're a plotter or a pantser, doesn't matter. Just make sure that you come. I tend to be over-prepared for my economics class. I always have a half page of stuff we haven't covered that I'm like, well, I guess we'll either decide I don't want to cover that or I'll tack it on to the beginning of the next class. So I tend to be over-prepared for my economics class and under-prepared for my things that go class. And I try and think of, like, as we're going through these activities and whatever, like, okay, how can I stretch this one out? What can I do? I finally have a couple of games that I just keep in my bag. The worst case scenario, let's play this game, right? And it has to do with the fact that my economics kids can answer questions, and we can have discussion, and they can ask questions, and we're having some discussion instead of my things that go kids that are just expecting me to do all of the heavy lifting. And I think it's fair for them to expect that, but that's the reality. Questions about plotting your story? We'll probably have time to like get into some nitty gritty here in a minute. The last thing I want to talk about is to think outside the box. So what do I mean? I know this is not a hard question, but think outside the box. When you're writing, I'm writing a novel. I'm writing a couple right now. You want to give your character as many problems as possible. You want to pile it on. As they say in all of my writing classes, they're like, be cruel. Okay? Give them problems, and then give them more problems, and then give them a few more problems, so that they're almost sinking under the weight of the problems they have to face. You want your character to have to work to solve their problem. And as much as possible, they need to do the work and the discovery on their own. Yes, they can have a mentor that kind of helps lead them, right? Think Obi-Wan Kenobi. Dumbledore in Harry Potter, right? He's the mentor that kind of leads Harry along. Yes, they can have friends that kind of help to carry their burden, but in the end, they have to be the hero of their own story. Nobody else can save them. That's what makes a really compelling book. That's what makes a really compelling story. And when you're teaching and mentoring in a class, that's what's going to make a really compelling mentor. Somebody who guides them, gives them information that they need, but pile on the problems. Make them do the heavy lifting. Make them do the hard work, especially for scholar age classes. Let them be the hero. Let them be the discover. Instead of telling them the information, help find ways to discover, for them to discover the truths for themselves. So, how many different ways can you think of, we're just brainstorming right now, how many different ways can you think of to present your material in class? Throw them out.
Verbally.
What did you say?
Verbally.
Verbally, so lecture.
No lecture.
I can lecture, and that is
Song and dance.
so you are not wrong. Music.
Like I'm teaching Spanish and I have a lecture class, but I also have a little kid class. And if you do head, shoulders, knees, and toes, they learn where their knees are. They know what rodillas are and they know what hombros are because they just did a song and a dance.
Perfect.
And everybody knows the words.
I love it. Okay. My sister Alice is really good at this. I am really not good at this. But Alice is she's gifted. Okay, what else?
Video, like video type things. You can do video.
Okay, video clips. Yeah. In fact, I've used several movie clips in my economics class. You know, it seems like everywhere when I decide I'm going to teach economics, every song I listen to, every movie I watch has something in it where they talk about money, right? Like, oh, this will be perfect for my economics class on my display. Perfect. What else?
Demonstration.
Demonstration. So give me an example of what you mean by demonstration.
Well, I don't know, I did photography, and so instead of letting everybody do it, I did it for them and show them the results, so, like, my own camera, so.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, what else?
Kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic. Okay, kinesthetic. We're gonna pretend like that's spelled right. Give me some, expound, elaborate.
I mean, depends on the class. Anytime you're touching, you're building, you're creating, you're hands-on. It's a different way of learning.
Okay, excellent.
It's like crafts, we're doing that.
Hands-on. What else?
Speaking of story,
Okay.
storytelling.
Stories. You know, stories are so powerful. They really are so powerful. I can take a concept that they're struggling with, and if I put it in story format, all of a sudden they get it. Makes sense to them. Excellent. What else?
Discussion.
Discussion.
Debate.
Debate. Perfect. And some of them really get into the debate too. Like, whoa, okay, this is not life and death, I promise. Okay, what else?
Guest speakers.
Guest speakers. We did that last night, it was super fun.
Field trips.
Field trips. Field trips. Anything else?
Projects.
Projects. Very good. What about simulations? That's one I've used a lot in my economics class. Okay, this is a good list. So come up with, when you're writing your class, come up with as many different, I'm gonna add games. Sometimes I have been known to invent my own games and spend hours like illustrating the game
And
board
also-
and,
It's present.
oh, presentations. That is so valuable, presenting. Okay. The more the students are involved in the learning process, the more they're going to learn. If all you do is stand up and lecture, like I'm doing today, and I feel like I'm a horrible example of this. I have one example. The more you stand and lecture, the less they're going to learn. The more that they are involved, the more they get to do it, the more powerful and effective your classes will be. So come up with as many different ways to present your material as you possibly can. It will keep them engaged and focused and learning. The second thing is consider your environment. Wow, okay. I was afraid I was not gonna have enough to fill the time. Now I'm rushing. Okay, consider your environment. So again, I'll just tell you about my economics class. This has really been a learning experience for me. So I originally anticipated like how many kids actually want to study economics. I'm gonna have probably 6 people apply, but we'll get bold and say 10, maybe 11. Okay, I had 16 students apply to my class. And because I wasn't anticipating that many, and because I was like, oh sure, I'll just take anybody that wants to come, the room I ended up in is too small for my class. And it really is. Now, that is not the mentor coordinator's fault. I want to make that clear. I don't blame the mentor coordinator for putting me in a room that's too small and doesn't do my needs. But the reality is that we walked in the first day, and my room is kind of a small room anyway, and it has a big table that fortunately is 3 big tables kind of put together. So, but it looks like a big conference table with chairs around it, and then chairs lining the wall. And I had half of my class that would fit around the table, a little bit more than half that could squeeze around the table, but one of them had their back to me the whole time because that's where there was space for them to sit. And the other half of my class was seated against the wall with no table and just kind of on the outskirts. And what I found is that the students that were at the table were involved in the class. And the students that were along the wall were completely checked out. They looked so bored. They were not engaged at all. And it wasn't working. And I thought, this can't. We did 2 weeks that way, and I thought, we can't keep doing this. This is not gonna work. And so I sat down, and I was really frustrated with that. Like, I don't know what to do about it because the room is too small, and we have this huge table, and I'm stuck with this, and it's not gonna work. And I was visiting with another mom, and she says, it sounds like, well, because I was talking about some concerns. I feel like my class isn't really engaged, they're not really focused, whatever. And she says, sounds like your environment is the problem. What can you do to change your environment? I would never have even thought of that. I was like, oh, I don't know what I can do to change my environment. But when I went in there and realized, that was the first time, week 3 was the first time I realized that my room was not, that the table in my room was not one solid table, it was 3. And I was like, I think I can work with this. So I go in there every morning and I pull the tables apart, and we have, because the room is so small, it literally kind of becomes this maze. But now everybody has a spot at the table. There are 4 students that kind of sit with their back to a table. They're in a chair with their back to, like, up against a table. But when we have work that needs to be done with a table, they can just turn their chairs around and do that, but the rest of the time they can look at me. So we have a table here, and a table here, and a table here. Everybody has a seat at the table. And when they walked in, they're like, what did you do to our classroom? I was like, just work with me, let's try this. When everybody's sitting down, you can't walk through the room. No fires, please, right? You can't walk through the room, but everybody, all of a sudden, everybody's engaged. All of my students were looking at me, they were engaged in the class. It completely changed. And at the end of the class, I was like, okay, I just need some feedback. What do you think? Did you like this better? How did it work? And they're like, this is way better, let's keep it, okay? So I had to think outside the box. I had to look at the situation that wasn't working and be like, okay, how can I make this work? I've had some activities that I've done with my economics class that, because we can't move around in our room, I was like, hey, field trip, we're all going outside, where we can move around and we can do the activity, and then we troop in and then we can talk about it. So that's one of those things. Consider your environment. Look at your environment where you're teaching. Think about that, because that will affect how your class works. Consider your requirements, okay? So you're gonna do your environment, you're gonna decide, what are my requirements? What is my expectation for my students? Again, in my economics class, I spend a little bit of time every beginning of every class reviewing important concepts we've talked about, because that recall is important, right? If you only hear the concept once, you're not gonna hold on to it. But if you know that there's gonna be a test that I'm gonna have to recall this, all of a sudden they're way more engaged, especially when you bring chocolate. I'm like, okay, who can tell me the definition of the law of demand? Well, can we use our notes? I don't care, as long as you get the information right. Oh, and all of a sudden, people are engaged because they have an incentive, right? Like, they want the chocolate. But it's fun, it makes it into a competition. I have some kids that'll do it just for the competition. My class has a work requirement. They have to do that. They are required to pass a final exam with 80%. One of the things I have to do when I go home today is finish up the questions that I currently have for the final exam and get it out to them so that they know ahead of time what is going to be on the exam, so that they can learn the material and study it and love it. And it's nothing we haven't covered in class, and it's nothing they haven't been able to take notes on, but now they see, oh, okay, I really have to know these things. These are the things I want them to know. If they come to class and participate, they pass the class with 80%, they pass their exam with 80% or more, and they do the work requirement. I factored into my fee for the class the purchase of a 1921 Morgan silver dollar. They are collector's coins. They run, at the time I purchased them, there's an economics class for you. At the time I purchased them, they were $42-ish a piece. When I had 3 extra students join the class that I wasn't anticipating at the beginning, and had to go back and purchase, just in that 2-week period, they'd gone up $3 in value. I had to buy the last 3 at $45 a piece. If they complete those requirements, We're gonna talk about the significance of this silver dollar and, you know, and money and work and the value, and I have a lesson that ties it in, but that's what they earn. If they don't complete the requirements, they don't get the silver dollar on you. But it's something that they can look at, something they can hold in their hand that represents what they learned. That is not necessary for every class. It's something I thought, oh, that could be fun, let's do it. But those are things that I worked into when I was planning my class. I worked into how can I make this something that the kids will get excited about, something that they can value, something that will help incentivize them to learn as they're still trying to learn how to just love learning for the love of it. Sometimes we still need that extrinsic motivators. But anyway, questions, comments, gripes, complaints. This is your chance. All right. My watch tells me that I'm 1 minute over, so I'm gonna let you go if you have nothing else to ask.
Thank you, that was